developer who, by the way, went bankrupt. The houses were all torn down anyway,
Oh my goodness.
and nothing is there. There was a community, now there is nothing. That is a good way of describing most of the government's activities on this planet, I guess. Something that was said of ancient Rome by one of the Celts. They make a wasteland and call it peace. That was the comment.
Yes.
You know,
This is
so.
very, very, very sad, and it is very disconcerting that to know what's here in Texas. The laws of Texas, as I understand them, it's very, very difficult. If eminent domain is declared, the state as Texas being such a liberal type of state that people assume that you are in Texas, your property is sacred and
Right.
cannot be taken away. You have all the rights, you have freedoms, and it's not so. It's not so.
And the population is well armed.
They have to be because the property has been taken. People are resisting up in northern part of Texas, around Dallas, Fort Worth, Tyler, all of those counties are over there. They have been resisting, and they need support. They need also.
Oh, absolutely. And along the southern border of Texas, we have all those people who have to defend themselves against the narco-terrorist bands that have been heavily armed by Fast and Furious.
That's another concern that I've been meeting with civic leaders in the area and learning a little bit what's going on. The end of that Keystone Pipeline is in a city about half an hour from where I am.
Mm-hmm.
That is Port Arthur, actually the birthplace of one of the most top 10. It has been nominated, has been recognized as the top singers ever in the world. Janis Joplin.
Okay,
she was born
magnificent voice
in Port Arthur. And the Port Arthur, as I understand, is the population over the years in there just go to work and go to the refinery, go home, and there is really no life other than that in town. It's been taken over by gangs. There are 2, 3, I don't know how many different gangs going on in there. And it's getting into the middle of a civil war, actually, in there.
Oh, my gosh.
It is, and because the population sees no opportunities other than those opportunities,
Right.
see no opportunities of advancement, of education, of civic and civil society,
We are seeing the
engagement.
fruits of crony corporatism.
Exactly right, and because the Hispanic population, exactly right, and the population, Hispanic population has grown, as in other cities, and no measures have been taken in order to accommodate them and give them opportunities and look for other than what the American philosophy is, take care of yourself, don't
Right.
just to provide for yourself, and the rest don't. Nobody will care for you. And now the same thing here in this area, the area I'm at, the Hispanic population is. I didn't know that. I noticed in my classes. I teach very large engineering classes. I had in the spring I had 70 juniors and seniors and other classes in graduate studies. And I've seen very, very few Hispanics in my classes. Very few.
That's sad. What we really are seeing is, there is an intricate web of social connections that support the sustainability of any society. And that web of connections, family connections, enterprise connections, all sorts of connections. I mean, simple things like the community-supported agriculture that for example, my family belongs to. It's 15 miles away from us, and we're in a rural area to begin with. It's a more rural area. It's actually a farm run by a group of nuns, Genesis Farm. And it's wonderful food, and there are even rumors that raw milk shows up there once in a while, but we're not allowed to talk about that. That's the sort of connection.
I'd love to visit that place. surprised. I'm always looking.
Oh,
at
look it up. Look up Genesis Farms in New Jersey, and you'll see it. But it's an example of the social network that really should support civil society.
That's right. And those are the things that we are here for. That's what we're talking about. Those are the things that we need to support, enlarge, sustain, build, and to get away from the corporate-dominated, industrialized farming types. I get now the good parts of the story. I get my beef from a wonderful family. Mother, father, and sons and daughters. They have 200 acres just outside of town. They come to town once a week. They have 200 acres, 200 cows, all grass-fed, no steroids, no hormones, no pesticides, no herbicides, nothing. And I also get my milk. And Texas is the only state that I know of that has actually laws for raw milk. They come to the farm, they inspect the farm. This is another family, a couple. They have 40 acres, about 40 cows, one cow per acre, all grass-fed, no steroids, no antibiotics, no hormones, no RGBH, no growth hormones, nothing. All grass-fed from the sun. Full of vitamin D3, full of vitamin K, full of all of the good fats that have been eliminated from our diet since the 30s, and
right with the change in the various plant species and animal species that we've dealt with. There's been a tremendous change. Well, this is true, and all of this local production is really important.
One of the congressmen in here in Houston, in the help me with the name, very, very famous.
Yes, Dr. Ron Paul is a champion
yes.
of raw milk. In fact, I did a video with him about 2 years ago. I went down to my son Drew and I actually went down to his office in Washington, and we videotaped him talking about his raw milk bill, and that video is on YouTube, available through, of course, Natural Solutions YouTube channel. And he fought the good fight for many, many years. Of course, he's retiring now and leaving Congress. Some of us
need somebody to run for him and take over his seat and do similar things and continue the good fight.
Mm-hmm.
This bill was in I understand that the laws here in Texas, for the state of Texas, does not apply. Ron Paul was introducing a bill for the whole country.
Exactly.
A federal bill.
It was a bill that actually taught a lesson as well, because what it did is it used the Interstate Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution the way the founders intended that clause to be used. Today it's used, of course, as an excuse for any government intervention on the federal level anywhere in the country, because everything involves interstate commerce. The intent, however, was to use that law to regulate commerce, not to forbid commerce, but to regulate commerce among the states, to prevent the states from favoring their own commerce over other states, to create a truly common market in the United States. And so what he did is he says it shall be lawful to engage in interstate commerce in raw milk. So he was using the clause the correct way to regulate and encourage commerce instead of to tax and forbid it, which is, of course, what they do in general.
Right. That sounds in the true spirit of the beginning and the founding of the country. Yes,
right.
Yes, it does. This law here in California was introduced by Jim Hightower in the 90s, I understand. That was one of the champions. He was a champion while he was Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Texas.
Right.
Now that's the good part. So that I'm very, very happy with those developments in here. Do
you want, by the way, while we're talking, would you like to give your website out so that the listeners have an opportunity to learn more about what you're up to?
Absolutely. Is ISE. That's as in the Institute for Sustainable Engineering, a dash like an hyphen, and then now NOW.com. So if you type that, and you will see a lot of links in there. You will see a lot of activities that I do around the country, around the university, around other universities, collaborations, and
I see.
What you mentioned before, some of the things that I am engaged around the world. I received an award from the United Nations years ago for some work that I wanted to do actually when I was pursuing my PhD. I did my PhD, full research PhD at UCLA, at the University of California in Los Angeles, in engineering. But at the time I was looking for sustainability.
Indeed.
And I had an idea, and I wrote down the principal topics of that idea, what I wanted to find out, and what, as a scientist, as an engineer, what are the parameters of sustainability? How much water do we need? How much food do we need? How much energy do we need? What are the flows? What are the heat transfers? So scientific things.
Yes,
And
to actually be able to measure, so we can make policy based on knowledge instead of on surmise. I'm looking at your website.
And how does it affect the biological processes? How does it affect the energy, water, food, soil, and find out how can we become sustainable? What is and take examples from other societies that lived before. And try to be sustainable.
I'm looking at your website.
I couldn't find a university to engage in that. Well, I had some talks, some good talks with one or two universities, a few universities of Colorado and Boulder, Oregon. I traveled to several universities. Then I called the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and this was more than 10 years ago. And I spoke with their engineering department, and they came right through loud and clear, and they say, yes, we have a PhD in sustainability engineering, and they were already over there a decade ago teaching wind energy, solar energy, photovoltaics, geothermal, and hydro in small scale, large and small scale.
So the technologies are there to make a sustainable world. I'm looking at your website right now, which I want to repeat for people. It is IceSamEdward-now.com, and I'm looking at the page, and you have this wonderful graphic there that shows a lot of the numbers that we have to pay attention to, and I'm watching the numbers go up. It's sort of hypnotic. It's the world population. It is the amount of oil left in the ground. It is a number of other pieces of information here. Very, very interesting site, folks.
Well, yes, thank you. Those are some of the parameters. You juggle some of those numbers.
You got to be able.
How much energy we have, how much water we have, how much pollution we make, how much energy we take from the ground, from gas, oil, and other sources. And how much the population is going up, who's using what, when, where.
I'm looking at one figure that is particularly important to us at the present time, and that is nuclear waste in tons. There are 44.5 tons of nuclear waste in the world? Or is that 44,504 tons? Sorry.
I think 44,000.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. That's even more impressive.
Staggering.
My question to you, of course, is after Fukushima, is it still sustainable? If those so-called storage pools, which were never meant to store anything, the staging pools, if they ever come down and all those fuel rods are exposed, is the Northern Hemisphere sustainable?
Very, very, very threatening situation. There's no doubt. The reactor 4 has some 1,500 rods that are in the cooling pool, and there's sort of a dome-ish thing on top of the structure. Now, bear in mind, I think I may have in my website a link to one or two articles that I wrote on the engineering and what we know from engineering. Bear in mind that after a disaster, a tragedy of that size, once once radioactive materials are released in the environment, in the vicinity of the nuclear power plant, something happens. And what happens is that the radiation becomes so intense in and around the plant that is, first of all, human beings don't even think about that. Anybody will be dead in minutes. Dead. I mean, there is no, the radiation is so intense that actually anybody is cooked. We're not trying to mince on words or anything.
Right.
It's impossible. It's impossible. Living organism, the radiation goes through it and destroys the DNA, and the radio death occurs in short sequence in no time. There's no way to get in there. The other thing is that the radiation. So okay, what is the alternative? We'll build machines, and we have things. Well, somebody has to operate those machines. So that cuts down that possibility. All right, so we're going to go into even a more far-fetched scenario that we have machines that we have robots. Well, the robots have to go through debris and difficult things and difficult passages that are not meant for machines that we have very difficult to maneuver, and take things out that they are not built. We don't have those types of robots, and then robots and electric circuits under intense radiation. Guess what happens to them? They fry as well. So materials then are subject to radiations that they are not designed to, that we do not understand the technology, we do not have the technology to do this. And these things, even in a perfectly functional nuclear power station, the extent of material science, the extent of material stresses and forces, and that those materials are subject to temperatures, pressures, all of these combined, those materials are already stretched to the limit.
Indeed.
They are working already at the limit of their the bonds in the atoms, the bonds in the nuclei, and the bonds of the microstructure of those materials are already being bombarded with radiation, in addition to heat and temperature.
And in addition to being shaken by aftershocks and earthquakes. In fact, wasn't there a 6.2 right in that area just a couple of weeks ago? Which, by the way, is very good news, because a lot of us were really concerned that anything above a 6 would bring those buildings down. They haven't quite come down yet, so we're okay.
Those structures at the moment are that's exactly right. The structures at the moment are totally unattended. Nobody can... I wish there was a way of bring this image to the mind, to the brain, to the soul, to the conscience of the American people, of our compatriots, our fellow citizens, and the peoples of the world. That those places are deserted. There is no way that they can be taken care of or attended, because we do not have the machines, and people cannot go inside. Well, look what happened in Chernobyl. During Chernobyl, the Russians sacrificed hundreds of their workers. That they put them on a kamikaze, and this is sort of ironic because it's a Japanese word. They put them on a suicide mission,
right,
to go and dump sand, and then they cover the whole, and all of those people could go in there for 60 seconds, run in, grab a single bag of 50 pounds or 60 pounds of sand, dump it on one of the holes in there on the reactor, and start building up a pile of sand, and get out, and then come out, and a lot of them, dozens and dozens of those just died in the years that
followed. Exactly. No, it was both heroic and tragic. There's no question about it.
Yes, and even if the Japanese did something like that, this is the price, folks, and there is no way to actually attend or manage or do something in a situation like that, because the radiation is so intense. It's many times, tens of thousands of what any living tissue, what the human tissue can support, and that is not instantaneous, but it's close to being just within minutes at that point. And machines also are not capable with the materials that we have, with the circuits. And even if we had those machines, we had to build machines with electronic circuits that can withstand those amounts of radiation, and we don't have those materials. Radiation goes through everything, and we don't have that knowledge. We don't have that type of.
And yet we know that the Earth is shaking, and inevitably a significant earthquake is going to hit that area again and bring those buildings down. In fact, just as I said a few weeks ago, it was a 6.2. Just a few hours ago, on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, in the northwest, I think it's probably actually across the Canadian border, there looks, I'm looking at eQuake 3D, and it looks like there was a 7.7 earthquake that hit the American Northwest just within the past couple of hours. I also noticed that on the news a short while ago, and I look at eQuake 3D, which, by the way, is a tremendous little download. It puts a program on your computer that gives you real time USGS earthquake information, just plugged in automatically, and it shows a 7.7, and I'm trying to see, let me see, I can zoom in on it, I'm trying to see where it is, because it's off the coast. It is, I got to put in national borders here, okay. It is above the Canadian, it's actually almost up as far as the Alaska Panhandle, so it's further up than I thought. But that's happening all around us, all the time.
That's right. And the way that has been used to cool those reactors in Japan, now those pools and the reactors that have been unattended, they melted, the cores are melted. There is a lot of energy that is left in there, and in order to cool them down, they are dosing that there is with water, with seawater.
Thousands and thousands of gallons an hour of seawater.
That's right, and there's no way to collect that water, to put it in some place. It goes straight into the Pacific.
Yep.
It enters the ocean currents. It goes all the way to the Aleutians and to Alaska, come down the coast of Canada, come down the Pacific coast, and has been showing in tuna off San Diego.
Right, absolutely.
Someone has written a paper.
And as you know, that's why General Burt and Dr. Rima are down in Chile right now, looking for sources of food from the deep south to supplement what's going to be possibly grown in the north. If this continues, all that wonderful local agriculture we were talking about earlier in the program in the northern hemisphere is going to become increasingly polluted. We're going to have to turn to indoor organic agriculture in the north, and the outdoor organic agriculture will have to be in the deep south.
It is a real concern. It is a real concern, and also the particles are so small when they are released into the atmosphere. They are micron size. They float. They become what's called aerosol. They become floating up in the air because the forces of gravity. The particles are so small they don't settle to the ground and come into the air and come into the soil, and they stay in there. And even if at that amount, micron-sized particle still has thousands of atoms in there of radioactive material, cobalt or 60 or strontium or cesium. That some of that plutonium or whatever, some of the fuel that is on reactor 4, it's what's called MOX. It's a mixture of plutonium and uranium. If there is a quake in that area, there is no way that those structures will survive.
Yep.
They will come tumble down. They are 30, 40, feet up in the air, and open up. Those structures will break, whatever is left from them, and all of that is released into the environment in vast quantities that are way above what Chernobyl disaster. Bottom line is that the Japanese could be at the point of losing their own entire country.
I know that. But it's happening now. I mean, for example, as you know, Dr. Rima and I have been taking very similar Geiger counters. We've taken very similar Geiger counters, and we've been testing the environment wherever we happen to be. And I've shown here, and we've reported on this radio program a number of times, I've shown that there is an elevation in the background radiation here in northwestern New Jersey that occurs when it rains, and that the HEPA filter in our whole house air conditioning system becomes noticeably hotter than the background, which means, of course, it is actually filtering out radioactive materials. We find a general background here of 0.090 microsieverts per hour. Down in Chile, where Dr. Rima is, the figure is a fraction of that. But when I take my Geiger counter and put it up against the HEPA filter, it goes up to 2, 3, 4 times that level. So the filters are actually, like our lungs, filtering out the particles from the air in a noticeable way.
That's right, and that's the way to do it. It has to be filtered in.
Then you have to dispose of the filter at some point.
Right, and in order to measure those materials, it's a difficult science. It's difficult to measure.
But it shows.
Exactly, I mean, what's in there.
I tell you, I just have to open the door when it's raining and hold the Geiger counter outside, and it goes from 0.090 to 0.120, which is a good 30% increase. But the increase in the HEPA filter is 300-400%.
Wow.
So it's noticeable, and it indicates that things are happening here that we all need to be aware of. And we are so grateful to you.
I also have a Geiger Mueller tube to monitor what's in my area. I have not noticed yet a significant. I've been putting it against different materials that I find outside when it rains, rainwater, and whatnot.
Try a filter. Try an air filter and see what happens.
I'll try that.
Yeah.
I don't have one, but I have to find out one. Yeah. Maybe the filters in the air conditioning buildings.
Nice.
I can have access to those and find out what's. I know they pick up a lot of stuff, a lot of the dust that comes from the refineries around here, and so in addition to that, that's probably very possible that they are picking up some and accumulating extra radiation. That's no doubt. That's a good idea. I'll check that.
This is very interesting. This has been a fascinating discussion, and of course, let's continue talking, but I want to let people know that they are listening to the Dr. Rima Truth Reports, which you normally can hear over www.healthfreedomportal.org. This is your co-host, Ralph Fucetola, talking to Dr. Tony Pereira, our sustainability professor, and very much an advisor of the Natural Solutions Foundation, and someone that we look to understand how we can go from our current situation of our species under threat, our genocidal threats that are facing us, to a world in which our species not only survives but can thrive, a planet in which sustainability is linked to not to the destruction of 90% of the population, which is what the elite wants. They want a sustainable planet with 90% of us dead, but rather to a sustainable planet in which we and our families can survive into the future. And that is, of course, a greater challenge. It's very easy for the elite to say, well, we could have a really great planet if all those other people would just be dead. And then, of course, to arrange for these genocidal technologies to help us get dead. That's one way of getting to sustainability. But there's another way, and Dr. Tony Pereira is one of the people who is finding that way for us, and for that we are grateful. But let's keep on talking. We have a 2-hour program. We're taping this in advance. Actually, it's being taped on the 28th day of October. We've been looking at Dr. Pereira's website, which is ISE, Ichabod Sam Edward now.com. And now is an important word in that context. We've been discussing sustainability on college campuses and in our communities and in our world. And we've been talking about the 900-pound gorilla that nobody wants to talk about in America, and that is, of course, Fukushima. It is the issue of Fukushimas in America, which is a phrase we have been using recently to describe the state of the nuclear power industry in the United States and the state of increased earthquake activity in the United States. It is no question that there is increased earthquake activity over the past several decades on this planet. I believe there's no question. Dr. Pereira, is there a question about that, or is that a scientifically verifiable factor?
There has been increased activity. I tend to agree with you as well. And some of them is one recent event is really disquieting. Normally, the activity, the tectonic activity, happens along the fault lines, along the Ring of Fire of the Pacific, along the coast that goes all the way to Chile and Patagonia, all around the Pacific, and back into China, Japan, and Alaska, and the Pacific Ring of Fire. One plate along where those tectonic plates meet, and that is one goes on top of the other, and tremendous pressures, tremendous temperatures developed in those areas, and volcanoes, the rock liquefies and volcanoes come out. And that's where in California we have those. We have the San Andreas Fault. Right. It's along that fault line. The fault lines develop. But now, of recently, course, there was one in the around the Philippines. There was a major earthquake in there, 9 or so, just recently in the last few months or so. That actually happened in the middle of. Most likely nobody is concerned about in the middle of the tectonic plate.
That's a little scary, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there's some fracking going on there. We've noticed that, of course, the fault lines are the areas in which the Earth's crust is a little weaker, and of course that's an area where, in wet climates, rivers will tend to flow. And of course, nuclear power plants need lots of water, so they tend to get built along rivers or coasts. And so they tend to be built along fault lines. Is that a fair statement?
That's exactly right. Along the coast and Japan, all of the 53, 54 plants that Japan has were all built along the coast. So in order to use...
So you think after 50 plants, they would catch on that you have to put the control rooms above tsunami level.
Right. So that's a... It was a tremendous oversight. There's been a tremendous.
Well, let's go a step further. Let's go a step further and get even more disconcerted. Let's take a General Burt observation and see how you react to it. General Burt says that for 4 days before the Fukushima earthquake, the HARP array was pulsing a certain frequency of energy literally into the shelf, the shelf outside of that, along that coast of Japan, and he believes that it was a manufactured earthquake, and he's said that in blogs that he's published. I noticed that today there's a photo on the internet alleging to be a HARP image showing a tremendous amount of HARP energy being poured into the American New York metropolitan area coast, exactly where this hurricane seems to be heading. Are we watching not just weather modification, but also literally earthquake modification going on?
That has been, people believe it or not, there has been quite a bit of the what are the words for that, study or research or
speculation
in those areas.
Speculation, perhaps.
In those areas. Actually, the specific studies and specific efforts and funded efforts, including ARP, which is an array of antennas that emit pulsed radiation up straight into the atmosphere, and supposedly it can be focused all around the planet, anywhere. Now, some things to keep in mind is that the amount of energy that I believe that ARP is now able to produce something like a few billion kilowatts of don't have the numbers in front of me. Whatever the number is very small when compared to the energy released by a hurricane. If you look at the energies released by a hurricane,
or by an earthquake for that matter,
or by an earthquake of that matter, are so small that you're trying to push a 40,000-pound lorry semi fully loaded and with a baby, and the baby's trying to push it. It's just not. The amounts of energy are very, very different from one to the other. However, there are some effects that are well known, which are resonant effects that happen in the same way that when we are young and children and happy and we don't know any of these things and are worry-free, and we go on a swing and mom and dad, they just push us gently just a little bit. And that push is right at the tip of the oscillating wave of the swing. It's a very well studied, one of the first things that was studied in mechanics. It's a classical problem. And you just put a tiny little bit amount of energy and the swing, guess what, almost magically, with just a little bit of energy, it keeps going higher, and the baby goes, yippee, and now very happy, and the swing goes higher and higher. That's something like that if we know some of the resonant frequencies of hurricanes that could be amplified, so that the energy is amplified. In other words, it's amplified by a very small amount of energy.
Got it.
If we know the resonant energy of earthquakes, that could be amplified as well. Are we sophisticated up to that point? If we are, we don't know. It's not been published. It's not been peer reviewed. It's not going around that in a way that we can actually examine and see that if ARP is actually possible to do something of that nature that is happens that can influence the weather or earthquakes up to that level. However, other things are also other types of experiments have been going on. These are fairly well documented, which are the chemtrails. There are contrails and there are chemtrails. I grew up with jet engines and watching vapor trails in the sky. I know a vapor trail, it disappears almost immediately.
Indeed. And yet now, not only are we seeing these things, but I recall my last trip to Texas. We were in Dallas, actually, for a couple of days, and I was in the hotel and looking at the news on the television, and there was this, the talking heads in their usual desk, and in the background was a beautiful image of Dallas with beautiful blue sky and the buildings, and drawn in the sky as though they were part of a design were chemtrails. And I thought, my gosh, it's becoming just part of the culture. It's invisible because it's there all the time. But it never was there before.
That was there before. And they are crisscrossed and they go back and forth and they take on bizarre shapes and forms. And this has there are quite a few papers, and there's been a convention in San Diego that was documented. It's on YouTube. Someone went out there. There's a couple of researchers that they actually discussed the. There are some papers that have been published, scientific peer-reviewed papers. There is a patent that was actually applied for and granted.
Right.
On put small particles, alumina, oxide particles, up in the sky, and in the form of very, very, very small particles that would reflect some of the sun energy back into space, pretty much as the way white vapor and clouds do. They reflect a great.
So this may be weather modification based on global warming.
That's weather modification.
But Dr. Pereira, it seems to me, however, if this were for our benefit, the politicians doing this secret program would be crowing about it. Yet it remains a secret and denial, and it becomes a laughingstock to talk about it. And if the atmosphere has changed, and this is a natural phenomenon, what is the change in the atmosphere? If the jet fuel has changed and it's a natural phenomenon, what is the change in the jet fuel? If it's an intentional secret program, as you're suggesting, what is the purpose? If the purpose is beneficial, it would be impossible for the politicians to keep quiet about it. So we have to assume that the purpose is not necessarily beneficial. Well, not beneficial to us anyway.
The benefits are minimal if and the risks are tremendous. This is again our generations long way of thinking that comes from way back in history, and the way we humans think about things. That once we have the problem, we're trying to fix that problem. And trying to, and in our time, we're trying to find a technological fix, a techno fix, in order to fix that. And one of them is ARP, or another one is chemtrails, and it's like at the end of some time, where we have all of this trash that we accumulate and put in the oceans, or put in the cities, or fill up canyons and cover them up, and then build condos on top of those.
Right.
And the solution, we'll burn them, and then we end up with a mountain of ash and things put up in the atmosphere in those chemical conversions that happen during combustion, and the ash is filled with concentrated chemicals that concentrate from televisions and circuits and circuit boards and radios and cars and whatnot, parts of cars and seats that are plastics that are burned, and then we find arsenic and cadmium and mercury and from waste from hospitals in that waste. And what are we going to do with it? And the obvious solution is that's the way we're looking at is that we build incinerators to get rid of the waste, to end up with a new problem, instead of looking at the obvious question, which is how do we not produce waste?
Exactly. We need to go toward a zero emissions world, and there are people doing that, as you know.
We want to continue with our convenient ways of waste and consumption.
But the truth of the matter is that those other ways, the ways that go to reuse, recycle, reinvent, move to zero emissions, those ways ultimately are far more efficient and far more sustainable. What Father Godfrey, for example, is showing in Benin with his zero emissions agriculture is powerful stuff. We're showing in that demonstration and in the other demonstration projects that we know about and get involved with, we're showing that natural production is not only more friendly to the workers and to the land, but it actually produces more nutritious food, and more of it. While the corn and soy, while the GMO corn and soy crops, the monoculture crops of North America, are failing this year because of a slight drought. We see that the organic we see the organic and sustainable agriculture doing perfectly okay. We've seen photos, for example, on Facebook of two fields next to each other. One is the GMO artificially fertilized field, and the other is an organic field. And one is thriving, and the other is failing. And it's the GMO crops that are failing. The monoculture could lead to, as we've warned, it could lead to famine. The collapse of the monoculture.
That's exactly right. That could have been the 10-year. This is a long-time study that was done at the Rodale Institute, that was founded by J.J. Rodale, a hero of mine. I'm certainly a hero
of mine too.
Many of the listeners of your program and of this program. That he, back in the 40s, when if you look at the history and the development of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, maybe something for another program, is absolutely disconcerting. It's been touted as one of the biggest discoveries, like vaccination is the biggest discovery in medicine, and Dr. Rima knows about, and certainly know about the great deal, and myself, I know about the great deal about those things, and pesticides is very, very similar, and
it is indeed.
They go back to the beginning of Nazi Germany, and to the development of neurotoxins for the control of population.
Exactly. Fluoride, for example, is a good example of one of those neurotoxins.
Fluoride was used in the concentration camps, in all of the 100 concentration, not just Auschwitz, but in the 100 concentration camps.
And in the Gulag. The Soviets learned from the Nazis, and they both learned from the eugenicists in America.
The other guy, the other hysterical guy with a funny mustache that took it to Russia at the end of the war, and they used it in the gulags, even in the higher concentrations, in order to keep the prisoners and the camps quiet, because it lowers the neurological activity of the brain, and it makes prisoners makes the population docile and behaved, and lowers the energy.
And now they want to add lithium to the fluoride in our water supply. If you want to be able to think, you better drill your own well. Dr. Pereira, we have been speaking for an hour. It has been an amazing hour. Dr. Tony Pereira, Solar Tony to his friends, the professor of sustainability. And indeed, they're in the middle of Texas, helping us learn how to have a more sustainable world. You can see his website at www.ICEichabod-now.com. Fascinating site, fascinating discussion. We need to have you back on when Dr. Rima and General Byrd are available to have this discussion continue in so many ways. The things you've been saying, the facts you've been giving us, dovetail completely with the warnings that Dr. Rima and General Byrd have been issuing to the world, and we so much appreciate you bringing your scientific knowledge to bear on these issues. We do need a sustainable world to have a sustainable species, and we need people like you to help us lead the way back from the brink. And into a world where humanity, as I said, can not just survive but can thrive. So we thank you. Do you have a couple of last words you'd like to add?
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Dr. Rima. Thank General Byrd for all of the work that you're doing, for all the things. Thank you to your listeners for spread the word, bring it to your families, bring it to your communities. Remember that if you do not speak out, then others will do it for you, and they may or may not be saying what you want to hear and what you want to discuss. So bring in that discussion into your community, into your life. We can do it. All of us, we can do it. This is not rocket science, or only a few people can wrap their brains around these things, and it's impossible to do. Others, it's impossible to do for others. We all can do this, and we all need to do this. We can build a sustainable society with freedom, with liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Professor. Hello, folks. This is Ralph Fucetola, co-host for Dr. Rima.
Okay, that was an excellent interview. That was beautiful. A lot of things discussed on this, sustainability. I happen to believe that we could do a lot on the planet if we convince our government to release many of the patents that they're holding back, which I believe they have been holding back for years. We have free energy devices, different techniques that could save this planet and reverse all the damage we've done. I'm also one who believes that all of this global warming hype is pretty much a pattern that the planet follows naturally every so often, and that most of the changes we are seeing take place because of the sun. The sun has a huge effect on the whole solar system. There are technically global warming is going on most of the planets. Huge changes going on, planets and moons. It's kind of impossible to say that as well would be man-made. You can't have carbon emissions controlling other planets as well. So anyway, I saw in the chat people talking about gold, ionic gold. I'm not too familiar with ionic gold. I've heard it's not as safe as colloidal silver, nanosilver. I've had tremendous success with ionic silver over the last 10 years. I've used it to heal many things. Personally, I've had the swine flu. I took about 3 or 4 tablespoons a day for 4 days. It got rid of the swine flu. Poison ivy, you just spray it on a few times. Once every 5 minutes, you let your skin absorb it. It killed it instantly. Skin infections. After my mom had her stroke, she had a few skin infections. Got rid of infections within minutes. Pretty awesome. We had a flea infestation. Unfortunately, the only thing that silver did not seem to stop were flea bites. The itching continued, and it got bad. But believe it or not, magnetic therapy worked. Not regular magnets, but the actual electromagnetic therapy. It pretty much got rid of all the itching, and 100%. One thing I've been doing recently to help my broken foot heal is sun gazing. Now, I don't look at the sun directly. I do this thing where I make sure the sun is on the outside of my vision, so it's just on the corner, and I do rotations. So I'll like look around the sun, and yes, and that's excellent. And I just saw someone asking about what is electromagnetic therapy. Now, if you go to YouTube and Google electromagnetic therapy, you will see that a pretty impressive performance done by what is his name? Dr. Oz or Professor Oz? Dr. Oz, yes. And he did a episode on electromagnetic therapy. Excellent stuff. I used it on my mom when she had her stroke, and it helped her out a lot. My mom, of course, is Ralph's wife's sister. So my mom's sister is married to Ralph. Ralph, of course, is an awesome guy. You can imagine growing up with him as a mentor. Let's see. Now, electromagnetic therapy, discussed that, yes. Onyx silver, yes. The silver is awesome. I carry around some in a bottle, actually, and just in case a friend ever gets a cut of some sort. Also, of course, gets rid of cuts instantly. When I had my wisdom teeth taken out, right after and right before, the pain was so powerful right before they got taken out that I tried everything. pain medication. It kept me up all night, and as soon as I swished a little bit of colloidal silver in my mouth, the pain instantly went away, and I got to sleep. And afterwards, after the wisdom teeth were taken out, I would let some colloidal silver sit in my mouth for a few minutes, and it healed so fast. My teeth, it was incredible. They tell you not to chew foods and smoke and all that, but I was, of course, doing both as soon as I got home, and still no problems. The colloidal silver did everything. So I see people complaining about wisdom teeth taken out and the pain, and I just want to go to their house and give them the colloidal silver and say, use this, and that'd be awesome. Everyone should have it anyway. I just got done drinking a few cups of coffee. Unfortunately, they are not the Valley of the Moon coffee. I wish it was. I'm volunteering for the show, but if I was getting paid for it, I would love to get paid in Valley of the Moon coffee. I've had it a handful of times. Whenever I go over Ralph's house, I try to bug him to make some. It's the most delicious coffee in the world. It really is. It's unfair. The techniques that Rima has used to it's unbelievable how it just tastes so good. It actually feels, you can feel the health benefits. It's incredible. Okay, let's see. So people are typing in the chat room. Okay, who's working on the technology? Okay, so yes, who are the geniuses who will reverse the damage? Where are the geniuses? Well, unfortunately, I believe they want damage. Who is they? Whoever is trying to pass all this legislation and use... there's just too much corruption to know anymore exactly what is going on. Or, there is no proof or evidence, but that's just the way it goes. Okay. Alright, so I made a video recently. I spent a few months on it, actually, and the thing that got me to make the video was the whole gun scenario situation recently, the theater shooting, and then Obama trying to pass his gun legislation, and that's what inspired me. And it was pretty sickening, and I thought it was worthy of making a video. So I'll show you the trailer. It was actually a 5-minute trailer video. The full video is 17 minutes. I'm going to refilm it, but I'll play the trailer for now, 5 minutes. See what you guys think about that. Okay, enjoy.
The Second Amendment was written to allow you to protect yourself when the police can't or won't. And it was written to allow you to use it against the government if it is taken over by tyrants. Police department!
The police and National Guard going street by street, house to house, sometimes entering open houses with guns drawn, and instructions to disarm anyone inside.
You say guns will be taken?
No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
They were a little bit threatened because our weapons were bigger than their weapons.
Walking up and down these streets, you don't want to think about the stuff that you're going to have to do if somebody pops around the corner.
I mean, shoot in America.
Yeah.
What do you do when they stack right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're prepped to come into the home. There's no negotiating with us, trust me. There was no negotiating.
Yeah.
If you resisted, you died. That were the orders. You go for gun or you die.
We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way. And just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
If they can't go to the movies without fear of violence lurking in the shadows.
If you want to introduce something, say centralization of power through the United Nations, centralization of power militarily with NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, if you did that openly and said this is what we want to do, there'd be a reaction against that. People would say, hey, this is a fascist state you want to create. We're not having this. But through this technique of problem, reaction, solution, you can actually manipulate people to demand you do what you want to do anyway. So it works like this.
And when there's an extraordinarily heartbreaking tragedy like the one we saw, there's always an outcry immediately after for action. So we've been able to take some actions on our own, recognizing that it's not always easy to get things through Congress these days.
I mean, could you have American gun manufacturers being cited for non-compliance by the United Nations? I mean, is there a conflict there between the potential treaty and the Second Amendment?
You would have a situation where the United Nations is looking at American domestic gun manufacturers and sanctioning them.
But let's take a look at what the Democrats are up to, as Democratic senators have also snuck in a gun control amendment that it's buried inside, of all places, a cyber security bill.
Since Washington's gun law passed, the murder rate actually increased, even while America's murder rate dropped. In fact, the National Academy of Sciences reviewed hundreds of studies and could not document a single gun regulation that reduced violent crime or murder.
Of all the real, proven threats to humanity, none of them have killed as many people as government itself. In academia, it's known as democide. Governments have killed over 260 million people. It's a giant number. So big that it's even hard to grasp. That is the #1 cause of unnatural death in the 20th and now 21st century.
When people say that the Declaration of Independence isn't law, how do you respond, Judge?
It was the first piece of legislation enacted by the Congress. If you look at the U.S. Code, which is about the size of 7 or 8 sets of Encyclopedia Britannicas, and you read the very first law, it is the Declaration of Independence, which says, when the government fails to protect the natural rights of the people, it is their duty to alter and abolish it. That's the law of the land that everyone has taken an oath to uphold. So go to Volume 1, Page 1, the Declaration of Independence is there.
People, you must listen. They won't take us seriously.
They want to exterminate us.
Nobody's talking about extermination.
No one ever talks about it. They just do it. And you go on with your lives, ignoring the signs all around you. And then one day, when the air is still and the night has fallen, they come for you.
Excuse me.
It's only then you realize what you're talking about organizing and committed. The extermination has already begun. Make no mistake, my brothers. They will draw first blood.
The Second Amendment was written to allow you to protect yourself when the police...
Okay. That was a preview of the video. Let's see now. I spent quite some time on that. I have a full 17-minute version of it completed, where I have some commentary, where I do commentary in it. And I want to refilm my part. I kind of want to cut my hair and, or not cut my hair, just clean it up a little bit, shave, and wear a suit. And I'm going to be doing that in the next couple days, and I'm going to be doing some heavy promotion on the video. There's a few tactics I'm going to use for marketing. You know, a lot of people don't like guns, and I understand that. I don't like guns. If it was possible to get rid of every weapon on the planet, I would probably consider that. But then again, you have self-defense, and there will always be people who want to take advantage of you, and so maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't be a good idea. But there's a serious case for guns, and that they really help us from to keep us safe from our own government. And time and time again, tactics are used to take the guns away. So I feel strongly about that enough to make a video. And let's see, I could play the 17-minute video if you'd like, just to kill time here. It's actually entertaining. I'm a bit controversial on it. I say some pretty radical things in it, but You may find it entertaining. Could do that. And again, we need the Second Amendment to protect the First Amendment and basically everything else. People don't understand it. More than 260 million people in the last 100 years killed by their own governments. Your own government harming their own populations. Sometimes 1 out of 10 people killed, up to a third, such as in Cambodia. Craziness. Absolutely crazy. We do not understand in this country. So, okay. Yes, I will link the video, and you'll have a better quality. Unfortunately, since I'm only allowed to do 200 kilobytes per second with Ustream, with my connection, the quality isn't that great, but on the actual YouTube video, it's perfect quality. And, okay, so I will play the other video now. Enjoy.
Our right to protect ourselves. If anybody tells you that the Second Amendment was written to protect hunters' rights, there's some liberal crackpot from New York or California. The Second Amendment was written to allow you to protect yourself when the police can't or won't. And it was written to allow you to use it against the government if it is taken over by tyrants.
It may seem revolutionary for someone in this day and age to say what he said. Most of us would rather believe that humanity has evolved enough to not have to worry about such things. But I intend to prove otherwise, and that perhaps we should be more cautious about trusting the government when it comes to preserving our gun rights.
I'd give up my gun when everybody else does.
And is that
Doesn't that make sense?
Well,
doesn't that make sense? I mean, if you were to, if there were guns here, would you want to be the only person without one?
So do you carry guns routinely at home? I mean, you have a gun at home?
Yeah, it's legal in the United States. It's part of our Constitution. You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny. Not to hunt.
Over the last 80 years, and especially over the last few decades, there have been multiple attempts to restrict our Second Amendment rights. As of lately, the government has been doing everything they can to carry out what appears to be their agenda. We have every reason to be concerned, especially when you consider the recent NDAA legislation that was signed into law on midnight December 31st, 2011. Recently, the oligarchy that controls our government has attempted to use the United Nations to further infringe upon our Second Amendment rights. A huge outcry by the population was the only thing that stopped them. But as time has shown, they will never give up with their tactics, which means we can never give up either.
Well, new concerns today as the United Nations is now considering at this moment a global arms treaty that would curtail certain gun sales. Right now, the UN is working on a plan that would put a whole new set of international gun rules in place. Supporters, including the Obama administration, argue it will make the world more secure by tamping down on weapons commonly used by gangs and terrorists. But critics fear it would infringe on the Second Amendment right to bear arms right here in the United States.
Well, it would completely work against what the Second Amendment is intended to do, but it doesn't seem that the Constitution is much of an obstacle or a problem for this administration.
I mean, could you have American gun manufacturers being cited for noncompliance by the United Nations? I mean, is there a conflict there between the potential treaty and the Second Amendment?
You would have a situation where the United Nations is looking at American domestic gun manufacturers and sanctioning them.
I've also asked the school board to make a part of every day some kind of anti-violence, anti-gun message. Every day, every school, at every level. One thing that I think is clear with young people and with adults as well is that we just have to be repetitive about this. It's not enough to simply have a catchy ad on a Monday and then only do it every Monday. We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way. And just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
And just really brainwash people.
It is very important to note that what Eric Holder said in that clip represents one of the most important tactics used by the oligarchs against the population. It should concern everyone that Holder is openly suggesting that we use similar gun control propaganda tactics as Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler used many years ago. By using the media to reinforce propaganda on a daily basis, the oligarchs have been successful in convincing the majority of the population that guns are a problem, when in fact, they are the only thing that can keep us safe, as you will soon see.
All right, you have to look at one of the most amazing pieces of surveillance video we've seen in a long, long time. Let's call it Granny's Got a Gun. Take a look. This is a bunch of gang members storming into a jewelry store in Garden Grove, California. They just rush in there, but seconds later, you'll see them hurrying. Shots are fired right there. That's because the woman behind the counter opened fire. And these guys, they just booked it out of there. You can see them crowding by the door right there. They're just getting out as fast as they humanly can. A bunch of them didn't even make it into the getaway car. They are they running fast. That's what happens when you give a grandmother a gun. Police say the suspects were picked up about a block away.
Oh, my goodness. That is some funny video.
The next clip was extremely disturbing, and in my opinion was a test by our government to see what they could get away with in times of a crisis.
Today in New Orleans, they got a lot tougher on the holdouts.
Police department, anyone home?
Not only the flooded areas, but New Orleans' driest and wealthiest neighborhoods, too.
Police department!
The police and National Guard going street by street, house to house.
We need to make sure, too, that whenever we knock on doors, people refuse to leave. We need to make note, call it in.
They say there are no orders to use force, just strong persuasion, sometimes entering open houses with guns drawn, and instructions to disarm anyone inside.
You say guns will be taken? No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
That happened today in this wealthy neighborhood where homeowners had armed themselves to protect their mansions. Residents were handcuffed on the ground. In the end, police took their weapons but let them stay in their homes.
They were a little bit threatened because our weapons were bigger than their weapons.
For many of the police and guard troops, it is an uncomfortable job to do this in an American city. This guard unit occupied a church, using it as a base camp. They had to leave a note because they could not get hold of the pastor to get permission.
It is surreal. You never expect to do this in your own country.
Chris Montgomery says he'd rather be in Iraq than patrolling American neighborhoods.
Walking up and down these streets, you don't want to think about the stuff that you're going to have to do if somebody pops around the corner.
Let me shoot in America.
Yeah.
And Chris, go ahead. You were describing how you and your team were kicking in doors and confiscating firearms from people. Did anybody resist? Did anybody ever shoot back? What happened?
Well, we had a couple of people resist verbally, and they got stuffed and cuffed very violently. We throw them in the back of the 5-ton or the deuce and a half or whatever, and then we take them out to the Greyhound bus station, which was the police station at the time. What do you do when they stack right? You know what I mean? And they're prepped to come into the home. There's no negotiating with us. Trust me. There was no negotiating.
Yeah.
If you resisted, you died. That were the orders. You go for gun or you die.
Everybody's hurting. And when people start hurting, people start doing crazy things. Just like Gerald Celente says, when they lose everything, they lose it. And that's going to be the pretext to come in and start taking people's guns, and the Army's going to be kicking in doors, and they're training the National Guard to do it, and they're training the military police to do it, and they're training your SWAT teams, and they're giving them giant battle tanks to do it. It's all coming down.
I find it both equally interesting and disturbing that when it comes to government-sponsored genocide,
that most people are only aware of the 12 million people that died in Nazi Germany. The reality is that Hitler was one of many tyrants in our past that have killed their own citizens. In fact, more than 250 million people alone in the last 100 years have died from the hands of their own tyrant governments. And right before that happens, like clockwork, the government always restricts gun rights in some way. Usually, it starts off with gun registration. Sometimes they target specific groups, but they usually always take away the gun rights of the population. Ask yourself why public schools fail to mention these other countries. I will post a link at the end of this video to a documentary that shows in detail exactly what route these dictators took in each one of these countries. I warn you, it's very graphic, but it's something that needs to be seen. It really is, so that you understand where I'm coming from.
If we can send our kids to school without worrying they might get shot, if they can't go to the movies without fear of violence lurking in the shadows.
What happens in terms of creating wars is a technique, a mind manipulation technique that I called in my books problem, reaction, solution. And it works like this. If you want to centralize power into fewer and fewer hands, if you did that openly and said this is what we want to do, there'd be a reaction against that. People would say, hey, this is a fascist state you want to create. We're not having this. But through this technique of problem, reaction, solution, you can actually manipulate people to demand you do what you want to do anyway. So it works like this. First of all, you create the problem, but you get someone else to be blamed for it. You then report that problem through the media in the way you want it reported, because the media is owned by the same people that own the banks and etc. You get the public to react to your problem by saying something must be done, this can't go on, what are they going to do about it? And at that point, they, who have covertly created the problem and blame someone else, who've gleaned that reaction of do something, then offer the solution to the problems they have created.
And when there's an extraordinarily heartbreaking tragedy like the one we saw, there's always an outcry immediately after for action. And there's talk of new reforms and there's talk of new legislation. And too often, those efforts are defeated by politics and by lobbying. So we've been able to take some actions on our own, recognizing that it's not always easy to get things through Congress these days.
Walking up and down these streets, you don't want to think about the stuff that you're gonna have to do if somebody pops around the corner.
I mean, shoot in America.
Yeah.
They were a little bit threatened because our weapons were bigger than their weapons. They were a little bit threatened because our weapons were bigger than their weapons.
We will. We can bring Gotham back.
What about escalation?
Escalation.
We start carrying semi-automatics, they buy automatics. We start wearing Kevlar. They buy armor-piercing rounds.
The Second Amendment says that a well-regulated militia, being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of a people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, I want to focus on the part that says being necessary for the security of a free state. As long as the government has weapons that can outperform our weapons, that pretty much makes our weapons obsolete. Especially when it comes to defending against a tyrant government. Now, I'm not saying we should all have nukes. That's ridiculous. And that's something that people who are against the Second Amendment would love to spit around all day. You have your Bill O'Reillys and all that. They love to say that. But what I am saying is, we should have automatic weapons. We need bigger and better weapons to defend against their bigger and better weapons. Else, what's the point? We need weapons that can blow up tanks. Because if a tyrant government takes over, they're going to have tanks in the streets, and we need to blow them up. That sounds radical, whatever. If the time ever comes that people are banging on your front door with automatic weapons pressed up against their shoulders, all I'm saying is, you better be one step ahead of them. The fact that I even have to sit here and state the obvious is all kind of ridiculous. What about the Second Amendment shall not be infringed do these people not understand? The occasional mass shooting spree is extremely unfortunate, and some would say that the media attention these rare events get are even more disturbing. But it is something we must tolerate when it comes to preserving our freedoms. Freedoms that protect us from a government that is willing to kill tens of millions of its own citizens if given the chance. It is a very small sacrifice that is essential when it comes to preserving the overall stability of our civilization. Just to put these events in perspective, there is a 1 in 110 chance that a person will die from a car accident in their lifetime. The odds of dying from a mass shooting in a public area in a person's lifetime is 1 in 384,000. If our government becomes like so many governments of the past that kills its own people, the odds of that government killing one of its own citizens is greater than 1 in 15. More realistically, 1 in 10. And in some cases, tyrannical governments have killed a third of their own people. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. These are extremely interesting yet complicated times that we live in. But we must do everything that is in our power to do, at the very least so we can say that we gave it our best shot. I have listed ways that you can help below in the description box. If we all follow the steps below, we can successfully preserve the liberties and freedoms of all humanity. We still have an opportunity at peacefully diffusing this threat. But that window of opportunity is growing smaller and smaller as every day goes by. And as JFK once said, those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable.
People, you must listen. They won't take us seriously.
They want to exterminate us.
Nobody's talking about extermination.
No one ever talks about it. They just do it. And you go on with your lives, ignoring the signs all around you. And then one day, when the air is still and the night has fallen, they come for you.
Excuse me.
It's only then you realize while you're talking about organizing and committees, the extermination has already begun. Make no mistake, my brothers. They will draw first blood.
Okay, that was it. So, of course, the only difference will be when I refilm that, I will put on a suit, shave, all that good stuff. Make it a little more credible, maybe. Some people suggested. So let's see. I will post the link for the 5-minute version in the channel, so people can download it or check it out or whatever. Be warned though, I will be deleting the link as soon as I re-upload the new version, but it will be in the same channel. So this will be my channel for now on. Let's see. Major Mind Job. YouTube/Major Mind Job is my channel. I made a Facebook page for it. So Facebook.com/Major Mind Job. I have a Twitter account, but I use my normal Twitter, which I haven't really used yet. It's JGiles1, I believe, or is it Jeff Giles 1? I'm not sure. It's one of those. Anyway, the Twitter account is linked to in the video. Should be, at least. Let's see, anything else? Okay, there's the 5-minute video. I will link to the 17-minute video. The 17-minute video I posted about a month ago. I spent a few hours promoting it for the first day. And it got about 150 hits, and then I stopped promoting it, and now I think it's up to about 700 hits, which is kind of cool. Let me see, video channel. Okay, here it is, good. Okay, here's the 17-minute video. 698 views, yes. Okay, and also, of course, this is my old channel, so that video will also be replaced as soon as I re-record it. Okay, and here is the 17-minute one. It's a good thought. Maybe we'll put this on DVD and hand them out. Who knows? I'm doing some pretty incredible marketing things. I'm using a Windows automation to attempt to get tens of thousands of YouTube people to help upload, or not upload, excuse me, help promote it. So hopefully, since it's my first video, I kind of have to go as far as I can in the marketing field to get it out there, because I believe it's something that most people should see, especially most people who are under the misconception that guns are bad. And I don't blame them. I used to believe that too before I knew anything really. But okay, so let's see. We have 20 minutes left to the show. Is there anything in specific people would like to talk about? Okay, let me check the chat room out. Yeah, Homeland Security has practically cornered the market on ammo designed to break apart and kill on impact. We need protection. We also need inside information on how to defeat their technology. If you have such contacts, link with them. Lives depend on it. Yes, indeed. And exactly what do they want to use these hollow point shells on is the question. There's some scary times we're living in. What kind of defense do we possibly have against a government with all these crazy weapons? People say automatic weapons are a bad thing. People shouldn't need them to go hunting. Obviously, we know that that's not. They wouldn't even be for hunting. Automatic weapons would just be to bring about a level playing field, really. Because if tyrant government takes over, they're going to have automatic weapons, and we kind of need to go up against that in that case, unfortunately. Okay, so what else? Today was about sustainability. Kind of got off track, but okay. Once again, awesome guest. Let's see, his website was ise-now.com. It was Dr. Tony Pereira. Awesome stuff we talked about. It's very entertaining, as always. So let's see. Oh yeah, I also mentioned that General Burt was on Truth TV the other night. That was wrong. My friend was wrong, so that's not true. Although he should be. Awesome guy. I met him once. Had a great time. Huge heart. Love the guy. He's awesome. I hope everybody gets to meet him someday. He's really cool. Let's see. There's a guy named Stelios on Skype who sounds like he knows about developing technology against the corrupt government military weapons. I like that. Unfortunately, I just hope we never have to go there. God forbid we actually are faced with that type of scenario. I hope and pray that we can avoid that immensely. Hope. That's not something we want to happen. At times I fear that the reason they have all these weapons and shells and ammo is because there's going to be some sort of collapse in society, of course. And again, I hope that does not happen. And that would not be cool. And then you see another interesting thing came upon recently was the whole zombie focus. People were focusing on zombies and whatnot, and all these TV shows about zombies and over the last few years, getting people prepared for that type of mentality. I'm kind of concerned when it comes to that. I don't really, it's not very entertaining to me. I've never been a fan of zombies, but apparently society has grown fascinated by them. So let's see, the election's in a couple days. Well, that's going to be fun. Not. We have a lot of choices. Although the media tends to just focus on the two, Republican and Democrat. Obviously, there's not much of a difference between the two. Very small, insignificant differences. Petty, really. I will be voting for Gary Johnson, of course. I voted for Ron Paul in 2008. I would like to have voted for him this time around, but I'm kind of losing confidence in him. I still like him a lot, but he's just not fighting as strong as I would like to have him, fight. But let's see. I don't know. You got the lesser of two evils. A lot of people think that either Obama or Romney will be better, one or the other. They consider them lesser of two evils. What does a zombie have to do with one world order? Jaminga, I'm sorry, I was just mentioning that people are being programmed with this whole zombie apocalypse propaganda, and I'm curious as to exactly why. It's a good question. Why would we have all this entertainment recently? A lot of people are focused on the whole zombie apocalypse type deal, and I suspect, my theory is that eventually society will collapse and you'll have many people starving, so in a sense it's going to be as though people are zombies at that point. What will people do to feed themselves? I don't know. It's kind of scary to think about. I kind of just want to... I don't even want to be on the planet if that scenario ever takes place. It's just too awful to even think about, really. I don't like it at all. Okay, so let's see. What was I getting into here? Is there anything else that anybody would like to talk about? Yes, so... let's see now. I don't want dead air here. Gotta talk about something, so... We have 15 minutes left. I may just call it a day earlier than usual. Unfortunately, I don't have any guests to come on the show. That would be awesome. The phone is not working at the moment. At least the speakerphone is not working. Let's see. So yeah, the Homeland Security has been... okay, this is a message from the chat room. Homeland Security has been programming zombie apocalypse for years. They have an aerosol rabies that can unleash on starving homeless people. It causes violent cannibalism. It has already been tested, and the stories have hit mainstream media. Wake up, folks. Yes, there's some very strange things going on. And that's indeed a certainty. We live in strange and unusual times. That'd be an understatement right there. Okay. So, are there any topics that people might want to discuss on here? I like to, and I remember hearing or reading something earlier in the chat room about HARP. Exactly, how there are many different forms of HARP. HARP is just one way they mess with weather up in Alaska, but there are many different sorts of technologies on the planet, many different countries, so in a sense, weather wars, some sort of weather wars could be happening. Would our own government want to use crazy weather on its own population? Likely. I think it's possible. It all depends where their base of operations are, or what they consider America to be used for. Is America being used for a tool? Such as Sandy, this recent Hurricane Sandy. It's obvious that something was going on. 24 hours prior to Sandy, you'd have some wild activity going on, because all this is measurable with HARP. All these in the ionosphere, there are websites that measure all these devices, and exactly 24 hours every time one of these devices go off. And you can see this on the internet. If I have a Facebook page I'm subscribed to, and I think it's called Harp Exposed or something, or Dutch Sense. He's awesome with this. That Dutch Sense guy. He does an update, and I'll show you whenever there's HARP activity. And you can see 24 hours later. I usually post it and say, guys, if you're in this area, be careful. Tomorrow, in about 24 hours, you're going to have violent tornadoes or whatever, and it always happens, like clockwork. Pretty wild. It would be kind of hard to deny that something's going on when every time, I mean, it actually happens. Statistically, I would think it's improbable that it's not going on. So, like someone mentioned, with HARP, you can, what is the website? Well, if you Google Dutch Sense, you'll see a lot of stuff about HARP, and he has websites, and excuse me, and okay, so yeah, Hurricane Sandy. There was not only the HARP going on, but you could see all sorts of spraying right as it was over the Caribbean in the lower backside. Just a bunch of repeated spraying going on, and so very sketchy. This is very sketchy one way or another. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. It's probably one of the most ridiculous sounding things on the planet. For someone who's not open-minded to hear, the government is controlling the weather. That just sounds straight out of a movie. Unfortunately, it's also one of the things that could be proven to be most likely. So it's a very strange circumstance we are in. If you want to tell your friends that the government's manipulating weather, it's not as easy to do as it sounds. Usually, unless you want to make the whole group, whole conversation turn awkward, that's a good way to go about it. And you don't want to be the one to make the conversation awkward. But then again, it is important to enlighten people about what is going on, especially if they don't know. So that's an art. That can be considered an art or a skill. Bringing these types of topics into a conversation without making everybody feel awkward. And things like that, you really have to pay attention to the psychology of people. It's very important. People are very fragile, their minds, very sensitive. It's like a bunch of keywords. If you say the wrong word, their mind will shut off, and they'll get offended. Their brain will make all sorts of associations, and then you lost them. Whatever else you have to say, it doesn't matter. So it's really hard. Every person you have to speak to differently. Everybody has their own way you have to talk to them. You can't just say the same things every time. There are different approaches. You have to find your foot in the door, basically. Once you get your foot in the door, it's a lot easier. Sometimes you have to use half-truths, unfortunately, just to get to them. I like to call reverse propaganda. It's not necessarily a good thing, but unfortunately that's how people operate. Our minds, Okay, let's see. How much time do we have left? About 10 minutes, 8 or 9 minutes. Okay. Dutch Sense, yes, you got it. Awesome videos. There actually are some really good channels out there, just as good as Dutch Sense. Some very impressive ones to keep up, especially with the weather and all that. I don't know where the weather's heading though. Hopefully it doesn't get as much worse as Sandy. We lucked out here up in northeast Pennsylvania. Last few hours before it hit us, the storm just completely died down. It was supposed to be twice as strong, the winds, and if the winds were as they were forecasted to be, we would have had trees falling on our house likely, because we live up in the Poconos. I have like 100 trees surrounding our house, and the ground is always wet, unfortunately, and so the roots they can't be as sturdy or strength as normal trees, so that would have been bad. Fortunately, the winds were real weak. Ralph's house, on the other hand, I believe a tree did fall. It did a little bit of damage to the deck outside the back, and damaged the gutter. Supposedly, my cousin, his son, Drew, was just looking outside as it happened, actually, which is pretty wild. And fortunately, no one got hurt. The damage wasn't significant. For whatever reason, his area at up in northwest Jersey, happens to still not have any power. And it's very unusual because most of the places in his area do have power. It's just the power company is avoiding going and fixing it. And it's just one downed tree somewhere that they could, could have took them 10 minutes to fix it, but they're just neglecting it. So they have a backup generator going on. I was going to go to their house this weekend and host a show from his house, but unfortunately, no power. So it'd make things complicated. Maybe next weekend. But Ralph and Rima are in Los Angeles right now and having a good time, hopefully, I hope. Mixing business with pleasure and all. That'd be awesome. Doing course and marketing, and they're hopefully going to use it well, and because a lot of people have to find out about this show. The show is not being heard by nearly as many people as I'd like. Hopefully in the next few weeks I'm going to put a lot of effort into making this show better, more available, eventually syndicate it to as many as many different platforms as I can. I'm going to help out with that. I'd like to, at least. And then, of course, I got my videos I'm working on. A few different techniques. Really cool technique, actually. I'm going to be mailing about 2,400 different YouTube people a day. People all who have uploaded videos before. So, study the Agenda 21. Okay, here's another comment, excuse me. Study the Agenda 21 map. Whether cataclysm war is being waged to move people. United Nations wants 200-mile no man's land corridor encircling USA. Make no mistake, government is fully capable of border control. Agenda 21 is definitely a concern. I just hope people care enough and don't buy into the BS. As far as this Obama versus Romney deal, two sides of the same coin as far as I'm concerned. At one point I was concerned that maybe my main concern is avoiding a third world war, a thermonuclear war with Russia and China, who are backing up Iran. That was my main concern. If we get into a third world war, potentially hundreds of millions of people could die. If you got a little nuclear war going on, I don't want that to happen. That's my main concern. Even behind the economy messing up. I believe with Obama and Romney, the economy is headed towards a disaster. I don't believe any way out of that, not with either of those candidates. Let's see, so at one point I thought Obama to be less likely to get us into a third world war. So I could be wrong, but he seems less likely to get us into a third world war. I believe him at the recent debate when he was mentioning about, he's just pandering to voters when he says that he wants to go to war with Iran. I don't believe he's sincere. I think he's trying to do all he can to avoid it. I'm not saying he's a good guy. I can't, it's 50-50 on who's worse. It's like, it seems both candidates to be downhill with either of them. I wanted to write in Ron Paul again, but supposedly if we get 5% of the population, or 5% of the votes to go to Johnson, then he will be considered, he will be allowed in the debates in 4 years. That'd be great and all, but at this rate, I'm not even sure we have 4 years. I mean, I almost want to say that every 4 years, but now just I don't see how things could get any worse. And Romney talks about balancing the budget in 12 years. That's outrageous. It should be done within a few years. Johnson and Paul both had a viable plan to actually fix the economy pretty fast. And of course, Romney doesn't know what he is talking about, it appears, as far as the economy goes. And Obama doesn't even know how to do basic math, as he's admitted recently on one of those talk shows. So that's kind of creepy. How do we have a president that doesn't know basic math? Who's horrible at algebra or whatever? That's kind of creepy. Our choices are dismal. I think either way, we're headed towards a catastrophic. I don't want to sound doom and gloom. I really don't. I don't like the whole doom and gloom talk. But it's better to be safe than sorry, and the only way we're going to confront any situation is to be realistic about the ways that it could go. If you're not open to the negative aspects, you'll never be prepared for it, and society will never be able to hold off against it. So, I mean, I respect people who only focus on the positive. You know, God bless them and all, but in any sense, it's to me to focus only on the positive and avoid all the negative is like wishful thinking. It is. It's total wishful thinking. I see too many people doing it, or just, avoiding all scenarios, both negative and positive. Too many people do that. So, we need the people, your average person. We need them to wake up for anything to happen. We can't rely on 5% of the population. I know 5 to 10% of the people back in the day during the Revolutionary War were all that was needed to make a change. But today it just seems that more people need to wake up than ever before. And we have to be patient with your average Obama voter. We do. We have to be patient with them. We can't cut them off just yet. No one wants war. This is a massive war machine, yes, Jaminga. And it's outrageous. War after war, and then you have these drones and the threat of drones flying over. There's all sorts of reason to be upset and unhappy about. There's also a lot of good things, possibility. I'd like to focus on the positive, but thank you, Jaminga. Trying. And it looks like it is 12 o'clock. So I've put in the time, entertained everyone for a little while, and we should shut down the show now. So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for your time and for listening. And next week we will be back with Dr. Rima and Councel Ralph Fucetola. And it will be an excellent show as always. That I promise. Okay, this is Jeff Giles, and I'm logging off. Everyone have a good week. Be safe. Take care.